about inclusivity. We hear these terms. How do we put it into practice, though? Inclusivity is fundamental to creating an equal society. Embracing inclusivity means providing accessible opportunities, respecting diversity, and ensuring that people with disabilities are empowered to live independently and contribute to their communities. It is about recognizing the value and potential in every individual. Hi, I'm Paige. I host Chezuba Talks, a series of podcasts dedicated to sharing inspiring stories of phenomenal people. And today's phenomenal guest is Robert Stack. Robert Stack is a pioneering advocate for people with disabilities. He is on a mission to improve the lives of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. One of the first in the nation to implement a national nonprofit, implementing an alternative to the warehousing of the disabled in large institutions. As a young civil servant, he pioneered the opening of the first state-operated group homes in New York in 1980 and led institutionalization efforts in New Jersey in 1988. His vision spurred changes predating the ADA, the American Disability Act, and Olmstead decision, directing states towards policy change years in advance. Community Options, a nonprofit organization he founded, serves over 5,000 people, I don't know whether that number has changed now, with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It operates in 12 states through more than 50 locally based offices. That is phenomenal. We'd love to hear about your book also in some time. Welcome to the podcast, Robert.
Thank you very much, Tess. I'm very, very delighted to be here, and it's exciting to speak with you. And what a wonderful introduction! You've covered all of my bio, and you've done phenomenal research, and I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. That's for an amazing personality. That's the least I could do. So tell us, Robert, how did you come to creating community options, and what service does it provide?
Well, a little background. For so many years, people with disabilities were brought into the culture of any society, either no matter where you are. And in the years ago, parents were brought to believe that they did something wrong. They did something against God. They did something against a greater force than they understood, and they were condemned to have a child with a disability, and that was the wrath of their evil doings. And that kind of religious sort of myth kind of permeated the environment for many years. And so and then that stigma came across during all of the 17, 18, 1900s, and they had to figure out what to do. So they said, well, the best thing to do with these folks is put them somewhere away where they're not going to be seen by the rest of the families. Mm-hmm. So they created institutions. They called them developmental centers. They called them state centers. They called them state schools. And they called them a lot of horrible things before this as well. As a matter of fact, in New Jersey, there was one called the Vineland State School for feeble-minded women of childbearing age.
Oh, goodness. Sounds terrible.
And they had two campuses. And one campus was called the main campus, and the other campus was called the colony, because they segregated you not only by sex, but by race.
Oh, goodness.
And it was an anomaly, but once in a while, one of the women with significant disabilities would get pregnant. And it was obvious that they were pregnant because they were raped by staff. And this is not 1800. This is not 1900. This is not 1950. This is not 1960. This is 1972. So there was and that's one example of thousands of people who were put into this situation. And again, it permeated from the beginning. Roosevelt, as we all know, had to hide the fact that he used a wheelchair as a result of his polio. So he always was in a wheelchair, but whenever the press came and got involved, he covered that up. President Kennedy was the first person to admit that his sister had intellectual disabilities. And he created a president's committee to address those issues. So he was the first one to really come out and say something. But anyway, what happened was, with all of these institutions that were brought about, there was a tremendous amount of abuse, neglect, and they didn't have the infrastructure to even absorb them. So while they put them away in these bucolic settings, they also put them into places that were more urban. Or, for example, in Staten Island, there was a place called Willowbrook, and Willowbrook had 6,000 people with disabilities living in one institution. And when I went there as a young boy, and when I say young boy, I mean when I went there in my early 20s, I met a guy who had an infection in his eye, and I advocated and complained about it, only to find that he had a thumbtack embedded in it.
Oh goodness.
There was there was the routine use of cattle prods, as you would recall in farms, but they used them on people, and they called it aversion therapy. So the media, thank goodness, the media does have a lot of great things they can do. So the media got very much involved, and there was an expose done about Willowbrook, as it was called, in Staten Island. And what happened, which was fascinating, was a reporter named Geraldo Rivera, who was a young man at the time, exposed it. But there was a man named John Lennon who was sitting in his apartment watching television, and he said to his wife, Yoko, "Oh my goodness, look at this. This is terrible." So what he did was he decided to have a concert, and he had a two session concert on the same day, and he invited Stevie Wonder and a bunch of other really great celebrities, and John Lennon played this concert about Willowbrook, and the money that was raised, which was significant in those days, was all used and applied to the legal defense fund. Because we can demonstrate and we can walk around with signs and we can complain. But when John Lennon got this clump of money, he gave it to a legal team, and they sued the state of New York, saying that this was abominable situation, and the litigation resulted in the Willowbrook consent decree, meaning that the people were allowed to be placed into community-based programs. This was the very first step for a large situation. So New York kind of set the bar, and then it followed in Pennhurst in Pennsylvania, and Partlow in Alabama, and states like Indiana, and states like, they were all starting to follow suit. New Mexico had to close all their institutions. So it created a sort of movement to start getting out. So when I walked into this situation, I worked in one of these institutions as a young kid after I graduated from college, and I ended up becoming an executive director of a small agency called United Cerebral Palsy for New Jersey, and I was offered a bigger job to work with the state of New Jersey to place people in the community. And what it became evident to me, Tess, was that there weren't many providers out there who were able to handle. There weren't enough providers out there that were able to handle the scenarios that dealing with people with severe disabilities. The result was I called up my friends and I said, I'm going to create a nonprofit. I'm going to hold my breath, and I was about 32 at the time, and I'm going to I had no money. And I mortgaged my house. I took out every credit card I possibly could, and I started Community Options.
That's because you felt so strongly about it.
Yes.
Right.
So and that's how it started. And our mission in '89 is the same as it is now, which is to develop housing and employment for people with disabilities. And so I started from a small house. Literally, I would answer the phone on the wall, and I would answer it with a fake British accent, saying, "Community options, please hold. I'll see if Robert's available." And then I would say hello to give the impression that I had a staff, even though it was just me. And and now we have about 6,000 staff. So we've
600.
gone from one small home to now we have about 650 homes, and we're in throughout the 12 states that you had mentioned
Wow.
before.
Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? And throughout this journey, did you ever feel that you need more support? Of course, funding is there, but in terms of people support, what was the lacking and what was the biggest benefit of you starting community options?
Well, the people support and the funding support are both worked in tandem. The problem is that in the '80s and I mean in the '90s, and even from 1990 to even until probably the last 10 years, the majority of young people graduating had one thing on their mind: money. They wanted to go work in Wall Street. They wanted to work on. They wanted to have positions where they could earn a tremendous amount of money. And in the nonprofit sector, we're not even close to being able to compete with that. So there was an altruistic kind of situation that had to kind of evolve. And it seems like it's evolving more. It seems like there's a lot more younger people that I'm meeting who are saying, I want to do something to make the world better.
That's nice.
Yeah, and it's yes, and it seems like there's more caring about how can I help my fellow friend, my fellow person. And so that was one part. The other part was the funding was difficult because to buy all the homes that we bought, et cetera, we had to come up with down payments. We had to figure out ways to do it. And infrastructure had to grow as we grew. I mean, I started off with, writing by hand checks. And now
Mhm.
obviously that's a little different. I also believe, quite frankly, that technology has played a phenomenal role in changing.
And yes, and social media as well.
Social media has done a phenomenal amount. We can't, the newspapers. I mean, that's really read by a very few people. The one thing about social media that's interesting is when somebody gives a position, whatever that position might be, there's a whole lot of people that either agree with that position or disagree with that position, but it kind of shows you that they're actually paying attention. And it creates a
Right.
dialogue between a large a group of people who can say what they think about that particular contention that has been made. So that's kind of a really good thing. And it also is easier to do things real time when somebody does something that's wonderful or somebody does something that is notable that you can bring the public involved into it, just as you're
True.
doing right now.
Right. And so, could you tell us about the types of housing models that your organization employs to cater to diverse needs? Obviously, there are many kinds of people who are coming in with requirements. And how is it
Yes.
different from other organizations?
Well, yeah, it is. It is in the sense that, as one of the things I will say, and I challenge any other organization for this, of the 650 homes that I've purchased, I would live in every one of them.
That's a wonderful
And
thing to say.
yes, and I don't think that that's necessarily the case for others. The other thing is, we try very hard to buy homes that are indigenous, and you say, well, how could a home be indigenous? Well, for example, we'll buy a small ranch home in Amarillo, Texas, and it's got to have a lot of land around it because everybody in Amarillo, Texas has a lot of land around them. So we try to fit in with that. By the same token, we have condos in
Mm,
Manhattan, in Harlem, where
right.
there are 4 bedrooms, and they're much more compact for obvious reasons, but they're the same as the way all of the New Yorkers in Harlem live,
Right.
small apartments. But both the similarity between both
Mm.
is they might be certainly a lot different in price, but they're both accessible. Both of them, you can wheel a wheelchair into the house in Amarillo, as well as wheel the you can wheel the wheelchair into the apartment in
Okay.
Harlem. The other thing is we hire people. We don't have any signs anywhere. It doesn't say people with disabilities work here.
Mm.
Tess, when you drive by any of our houses with your friends, you won't be able to say, "Oh, that's where the community options house is," because we don't. We try to blend in totally. Our transportation, we have over 750 vehicles, Tess, and of our all of our vehicles, none of them have logos. None of them have signs that say
No
it's community
identifiable.
option.
Mm. Got it.
You get it. So we're trying to blend in with everyone. The other thing is we hire indigenous relative to, I'm nothing more than an infrastructure. So the woman who runs Amarillo has an accent like she's from Amarillo, and she's been born and raised in Amarillo, and she knows the politics of Amarillo,
Mm. Mm.
and she
Mm.
knows the geography of Amarillo, and she knows where all of the stores are and all of the jobs are, and she can get around. Whereas the person from Harlem, that person has a totally different perspective on things relative to
Totally. Yes.
their surrounding environment. So we try to make sure, and then they'll hire people they know in Harlem or the Bronx or Queens or wherever, or Manhattan, and Amarillo will hire people from Amarillo or Happy, Texas, or and then Lubbock is the same way.
Let's take a break to understand what Chezuba is. Everyone at some point ponders on how this beautiful life can be made more meaningful. Maybe you're a leader trying to enhance your employees' experience at your organization. Or you already work for the community and seek volunteers with state-of-the-art skills to strengthen your nonprofit. Whatever your situation, know that you can make a difference. Chezuba began with this very vision. A vision to facilitate every skill and every passion in the world in meeting a social need. Corporate volunteering has several benefits for both businesses and organizations. In parallel, experienced and enthusiastic volunteers join NGO workers, enabling them to serve the community more effectively. Chezuba offers everyone looking to add purpose and meaning to their lives a chance to connect or volunteer virtually with nonprofit organizations from over 100 countries around the world. Visit www.chezuba.net and explore opportunities to find meaning. Chezuba, your platform to do good. And now, back with our guest.
That's fantastic. I haven't heard of anything that's so unique and yet so different. So, tell us also about the employment opportunities that people with disabilities have. And like you mentioned, you have people there to support with the local community and find jobs for them. Now, do you also have collaborations with organizations where you identify jobs which are available and kind of match these jobs with people?
Yes, well, that's a great question. Thank you. We do a whole variety of things. First and foremost, I think it's important to mention that we all work for money. That's acceptable, but we also work for relationships. We also work to feel good about what we do. You're conducting this podcast, and you're saying to yourself, I'm making a difference. I'm doing something important.
Yes.
Anyone with any who works anywhere wants to do something to improve whatever they're trying to improve, whether they're trying to make the best Starbucks coffee they can, or whether they're trying to
Yeah.
do whatever they can. So we believe that people, and there's also a very important unique feature that we realize. Test, there is a direct relationship between the severity of your disability and
Mm.
your level of loneliness.
Right.
And what we realize is that it's so important to get people with disabilities to be able to interact with people
To
without
socialize.
disabilities. And we all, and we talk about diversity. Why is diversity so important? Diversity is so important because we all learn from each other's cultures, each other's
True.
perspectives, each other's ideas. I just find it fascinating that, I always say that a person with a significant disability in a wheelchair is a very good planner. Now, why? Because when I go run to my car, I might have forgotten my keys and I have to run back in. When a person with
Hmm.
disability leaves their house, they better have everything that they need that day, because it's so much more trouble for them to return to their house and put everything back so they can't forget anything. So they have to be good planners. They
Yeah,
have to think ahead.
actually.
And so what we do is we find there's we go all over, and there's so many jobs that people with disabilities can do, and it can be anything. We have people working with a variety of organizations. From it could be NASA, it could be Google, it could be IBM, but it could also be a
Local
small
supermarket.
school. Yes, it could be wherever they're needed. And again, we what we do that's a little different, Tess, is we have what we call a job coach. So the job coach we pay, and they'll take a guy with them to the job, and they'll help them find the job, and they'll say to the employer, "Look, I'll work with this person until they get the job correct, and then I'll gradually fade, and I'll have my phone, and if there's a
Hand
problem, you
holding.
can call me." Yes. So there's a tether, there's an infrastructure, and there's a follow up. And we always say we do not know how to spell litigious. So if it doesn't work out, we're fine. We'll leave and we'll go find another job. So if the employer just says this isn't working out, we'd rather say, okay, fine. We'll give you another guy to try, but we're always willing to move on and find somebody else to do it. But we don't want to create any kind of issues with any employers. We're happy that we can work. Finally, I want to
That's
make one more
lovely.
point. Yes, the other point I want to make is sometimes we meet people who come to work with a little drama because they're worried about what their neighbor said about them the night before, or they had a problem. Our people, the people we support, they're so delighted and so happy to come to a job that they never seem to question what's the tasks that are before them, or and they're always on time, and they're always eager to please the employer, and I think that makes a big difference.
Very true, very true. And I think that's a very insightful view. When you say they are great planners, never thought of it like that. Thanks for bringing it to notice. Robert, also tell me about what are the challenges that you face within the disability field? Of course, there are these physical challenges. Of course, there are mental challenges. But as a person who has started this nonprofit, what are the challenges that you are facing currently?
Well, there's several. One is the fact that whether we want to admit it or not, people judge you about the way you look. And
Yeah.
if they see someone who has a different sort of an accent, maybe they have cerebral palsy, maybe they have slurred speech, they have a different conception of them. I always find it humorous when I bring a person with a disability to any kind of any kind of event where the person starts speaking to them louder. It's kind of like they do when people they don't
Mhm.
understand the language you're speaking. So someone will say, bonjour,
All
monsieur, comment
audible,
allez-vous?
yeah.
And they'll say, "Hello, how are you?"
Yeah.
Well, they don't understand just because you're speaking louder, that they're going to understand English. The same as with people with disabilities. They assume that just because they speak slower or they might look differently, that they're not intelligent, and they are. And they can bring a vast amount of culture and information to the person. So it's getting that's the one barrier that we always have to overcome.
That's a
And
societal
once we get
barrier.
Yes. And and once we get through that the way that they look, then we have to become accustomed to how we can gear up what they do. But I'll give you an example. We had a woman named Rochelle, and Rochelle lived in an institution most of her life. She also used a wheelchair. She also had intellectual disabilities, and she also was blind. Now, we are trying to find her a job. Okay, so our job coach walked into a particular restaurant and said, "We're trying to find people jobs." Blah 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 blah. Now, while they're talking to the manager of the restaurant. The manager is sitting at a table and they're taking the knife and fork and spoon and they're rolling them in these napkins. And finally, the job coach says, "Why are you doing that?" And the manager said, "Because no one will do it. The wait staff and the bus people hate it." So she said, "I have a perfect person for you." So now Rochelle goes to that restaurant and she rolls all of the napkins. The waiters are happy, the bus staff are happy,
Yeah.
and the manager is happy. Now she might only do it about 10 or 15 hours a week, but now she's there.
Still.
And again, there's people saying, "Hi, Rochelle, how is your day? What are you doing? Thank you so much for this. Would you like to take some food home with you?" And she's also, making a little money. And again, it's a relationship, and that's what she's trying to build.
Perfect, perfect. That's the perfect example actually you gave for everybody to understand what inclusivity is and what opportunity is. Fantastic. Robert, tell us about your goals for the future in terms of expanding or enhancing your programs and services.
Well, we would like to. One of the things that we realize, there's an old joke, Tess, which is, and it's with my CFO and I, where the CFO says to me, "What if we train these people and they leave?" And I say, "What if we don't train them and they stay?"
Perfect, wonderful.
So
Yes,
we're trying very desperately to put together funding to develop more training centers so that we can train staff how to deal with people that have different kinds of behavior, how to train staff relative to all of the subtle nuances that are associated with anybody with a disability that needs to work or live or come out of a facility, how to interface with parents, and then how to deal with some of the more higher straddles of situations regarding interacting with people that may have trouble dealing with people with disabilities. So we're trying our new goals are to really develop more training centers where we can also come up. We have, as I said, we have 6,000 staff, but so many of our staff started off at the bottom and now they've been promoted and promoted and promoted. My executive vice president started out as a direct staff person, and 26 years later, Svetlana is now the executive vice president, and she's in the succession plan, she's one of the most important people for the organization. So we try really hard to promote from within, but it's better to promote if the people are trained.
true, absolutely true. And lastly, Robert, please, I understand that you are writing a book. So could you share some more information about that?
Called Stolen Lives. and
Stolen
um,
lives.
it's got a couple of working titles, but it's actually Stolen Years. There's the new title that they gave me. So Stolen Years is really about all of the people that have been placed in these institutions and their years have been stolen. And one of the teasers I will tell you, we took a person just recently out of a terrible institution he lived in for almost 15 years. And he had very bad behavior. And they transported him. And when they gave him to us in the house, the agency that we don't want to talk about, that gave him to us from the institution, they transported him in leg irons and handcuffs. And that was 6 months ago. That was 6 months ago. And now he's going to the Walmart. He's enjoying his life. my staff's so happy because they give him a $5 bill, and he goes and he orders at the window of the Burger King, and he gives them the money, and they give him the change, and he puts it in his pocket. And so that's how I start talking in the book about this particular person and how his years have been stolen. And if we the only thing I want to say about the book is that one of the fundamental things we want to learn: treat people like everyone else, and treat people with the same dignity that you want to be treated with. It's a very fundamental, biblical, do unto others as you want to do unto yourselves. And I think that this book is going to go through that. It's going to go through funding. So also going to show how we can change the world, hopefully, for people with disabilities in the future.
Lovely. Looking forward to that book, and please keep us in mind. Send us a link where we can order it, and we'd love to hear it. Read it.
Yes, it'll be out. It'll probably be out within the next 8 months. So I look forward to it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yes. Well, Robert, it's evident that your pioneering efforts in advocating for the rights of individuals with disabilities are transformative, and I can see that you're passionate about it. I can see that your team, your staff is passionate about it, and you can make a difference in a person's life. And I'm sure it's a ripple effect. Those people will also make sure that there's a ripple effect in society, and hopefully we get to see an equal and just society. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.